Hello everybody, this is Founder Herein, and I am with Fantasy Grounds College. Today we're going to work on a map that was provided to us by a community member, Moepsii. He goes by Moepsii Maps. He has an Etsy page where he sells and distributes his digital maps. I thought I'd mention that since he's the one that created this map. The map that I'm going to use today presents a challenge on how you would want to attack a map like this. So I'm going to do some suggested ideas. There may be some challenges that I can't figure out, but it's a little different than a traditional map. You have water, you have docks, and then you have land, and you have buildings. And I think if you do this in a certain order, if you attack it in a certain way, it's going to be a lot easier on you than trying to reinvent the wheel and do everything one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm going to go ahead and switch the scene here. So I'll switch over to Fantasy Grounds. Right now I'm in the starting soon, so here we go. So this is the map that I was talking about. This is the actual Moepsii maps that was donated to us for our map class. I'm going to build this map because I need to use it for a teaching tool anyways, but I want to share this with you guys so you can see the process. So there is a kind of a unique challenge here where it has water, and then there's a lot of different elements to it that I have to keep in mind when we're working on a map like this. So there is a way to look at the map in layers. So let's identify the layers that we might want to work with. So here we have assets that are like little bushes, we have some cranes, and then we have some lower docks, and we have the water. And then these things here could be buildings like warehouses and such. And then you have this land or boardwalk type thing that you have to consider. So there's different amounts of things that need to be looked at. So if I was going to do this for a campaign, or maybe I'll use this in an adventure. So I would probably first start with the water. So that's going to be the lowest lying layer. And I'm going to start with that, I believe. So that would require that I put a mask on top of the entire map. So let's do that first. So with the map tools, and I'm assuming that you've already have a map with you, I'm going to unlock the map, and this will bring up the map tools. At this point, before I add line of sight or anything, I'm going to add a layer of water. And that's going to take care of these little channels of ocean water. Now, first thing first, when you have the map and you have it selected, go ahead and lock it. That way it won't move on you. Be a lot easier than trying to reinvent the wheel and trying to move it around if something happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the effects area. And on the very bottom of the tool, there is an effects layer. So all this is creating a layer that's going to be the ocean or the water itself. So I want to look at the effects type, and I'm going to pick water first, or you can pick ocean. So let's see what ocean looks like. So if I click that, it kind of makes the whole map blurry, and you can see it looks like rain running down a windshield or something like that. So you don't want that, obviously. So the first thing you have to do is enable a mask. And what that does is it cuts out the entire layer of the effect until you want to reveal the areas that you want to look like water. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave this titled as ocean, but I'm going to make a folder. And what this folder is going to be called is map effects or something like that, so I know what it is. And the map effects, if any, are going to go inside of that folder. So these are the overlay masks that I just put on, those sort of things. So now that I have a folder, it keeps it organized. So the next point is I'm going to take and start revealing the areas that I want to show. So if I start lining these out, it's going to show underneath the mask, or it's going to open the mask up. So I want to take and first turn down the distortion a little bit and a little bit on the vertical size. and then maybe the speed a little bit. And then to blur it a little would be to blend it so it doesn't look so contrasted on the edges. So maybe about 33%. And now I'm going to just take this tool and cut out these little rectangles. And I'm in the reveal area. So you got to remember where you're at. So reveal area, and I'm on the ocean layer. You don't want to be down here. You want to be in the layer that you're working in. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the area, and I'm in the reveal area tool. So all I'm going to do is left click and drag and draw this rectangle out, and that will get me some of the effect I'm looking for. So here's the effect, and as you can see, I got a little too close to the edge. So how to fix that is to cover that area back up. So I'm going to come up to this very edge, and I'm going to make another small thin rectangle. You can see it's distorting already, so I don't want that. So you don't want to put the water right up to the edge. You want to give it a little bit of a buffer so that you don't get this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and cover it. So what you do is you switch to hide area, and the only area I'm really going to hide is this little boundary right here. And then there's also maybe a little bit of boundary here. And then over on the right hand side, there's a little bit of a boundary that I want to... There we go. So that kind of fixed that problem. And now I'm going to go back over it and try not to grab so much of the dock piece. There we go. So that's better. So when you're drawing in these effects, if you go right to the edge, it's going to pull in the actual area. So I'm going to go through and line out the water. If you have any questions, let me know. And as you can see, I did it again. I got too close to the edge. So really not going to know what's too much, but as you can see on the right hand side, I have way too much, too close to the edge. And what I'm doing is going over the edges that I went too far on. I still got to fix it, still a little bit too much. So I'm just systematically going through. I'm going to reveal just the water areas and try not to pull in too much of the dock. That's a problem that you'll run into when you first start using the tool. So you got to watch out how much you grab. Yeah, it does. It takes a while to get used to. And with this tutorial, I'm going to go through some of these concepts that most people stumble on. It's one of those things where you have to use it in order to learn it. You just can't jump right in and start using it. You have some familiarity with GIMP or Photoshop. The concepts will be a little easier for you to grasp. But you have to work in layers. And right now I'm working on the very bottom layer, which is the ocean part. So that's the first part I'm working on. And here again, I've drug too much of that over, so I'm going to fix that by covering it. So I need to go up to the edge and cover this a little bit more. Yeah, I went a little bit too close to the edge. There we go. So now I'm going to go back to the reveal area and try to get a little bit more without grabbing too much. See, even that was too much. So yeah, I'm going to go back and uncover it. Yeah, so I'm putting on the water effect on the bottom layer. So this is the very bottom of the map. That way everything covers on top of it. But I'm putting a mask layer on. And it's one of those things where if you grab too much of the water, it pulls in the dock or the side that you're, like a riverbed or whatever. So you got to be careful. Yeah, right on, Drake. So I went too close to the edge and it pulled some of the dock or some of the land. I don't want that. So I'm going through and exposing the areas on the map that I want to show the ocean effect. Yeah, audio's on the roadmap, but I don't think we're going to get that this year. You're going to have to get used to the drawing tools before we do that. So I think to add another feature like that is just going to add to the confusion. I think we have to master what we already have. And I noticed a lot of people still struggling with the map tools. So we have a few months before we need audio. Alright, so that's the bottom layer. If I wanted to, I can also put water on there, but I think that's good enough. It gives you the impression that there's waves and you know, like movement in the water. So that might be a good place to stop there. And then you can adjust like how much water you want, how large it is. Usually I dial it down so it's just not so crazy. It looks crazy if you just have too much. See, that's way too much speed there. So I think with just like about 6 or so is a pretty good number. And then like blurring cuts the lines. There's some artifacts in there. If you blur it, you know, about 75%, it takes some of that, the edge, and kind of fuzzes it up so it blends in better. So it's not such a drastic area. So this is an area that I forgot, so I'll go ahead and unmask that. Yeah, that's pretty good. At least I didn't grab any of the dock or the edge of the map. So I'm just going to kind of go through and check real quick, see if I left anything out. So I got that little area there. I try to grab this area up here, but it was way too skinny. I mean, I have to go like barely anything here because it grabs the dock and some of the map, so I got to be careful here. Yeah, so that's about as much as I can go on that. As you can already see, it's starting to pull into gray. So I'm going to go back over it again, and first I'm going to change this a little bit, and then I'm going to come back here and fix that so it's not, yeah, it didn't work. Still doing it, so let me try that. There we go. It's a little bit, that line is a little bit less defined, but you're not going to see that when you're zoomed out anyways. So that is the ocean part. So that's the first step. Now, to make this more simulation of like a pit, I'm going to draw pits in here on top of this. So I'm going to actually create a new layer, and it's going to be on top of this map. So I'm not putting it necessarily on top of the water, but I am going to put it above the water. So if you don't have an asset or anything to select, it will create its own layer. That's something you need to know in Fantasy Grounds, is that if you don't have a layer selected, usually Fantasy Grounds will create its own layer for whatever effect or whatever you're doing. So if you're going to work with a layer and you want the effect on that layer, then you need to select it. So in other words, if I want to put the pit on the map layer, I need to highlight the map before I start my line of sight. And then when you create the line of sight, it'll be attached to that layer. If not, you're going to have a separate layer, and it'll sit on top of, wherever you move it. So I don't need to necessarily add it to a map, but if you want to know how the layers are assigned, you need to select if you want it to go on top of a certain layer. If not, then it will create its own layer. So that could be handy, or it could be troublesome, depending on what you're doing. This map was donated to us by Moepsii. He made the map, and he basically he put the details in it and donated it to us for our map tools. Alright, so next I'm going to go over and start thinking about how I want to do the pit. Because the pit is actually a big area, but I want to do the smaller areas first, because those are the most difficult to deal. So I'll do this little area here first. So I'm going to go to the line of sight tool, which is the brick, or the line of sight, and then I want to go to pit, where it says experimental. And I'm going to just drag this area in here and draw the pit. So I'm going to come up here and go to the edge. And then I want to go to in this case, I'm going to use the rectangle tool because it's a lot easier. So I'm just going to highlight and select this area. And that's basically a pit. So once I have that area selected, I'll move on to the next area. So this is going to be a lot harder to do, so I'm going to have more than one pit. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So to make this a little simpler, I want to take this and click on this corner and drag this over, and then use the arrow key to kind of get an idea where I need to go. Okay, I see now. So it's quite a long pit there, but see, it took the border and moved it. But I can take these points if I go to select mode, which is where you need to go, and click on a point and drag it where I want it. You want to make sure you actually have the point selected before you drag. So I'm selecting the point and now I'm dragging it. Sometimes when you click on it and try to drag, it's not actually selected. So click to select, then drag it. It's much simpler to do that than fight with it. And now I'm going to go to the other side of the map and see where we're at there. I hit escape to make sure that I'm not in drawing mode, and as you can see, this is over. So with this one, drag it down a little bit. I hit escape and go to the selection tool. There we go. So that's a little better. At least it's not right up on the wall. That makes sense. So these are buildings, so we'll get to those next. Right now, I am basically building the pits that are going to be in the water. So that's what I'm doing right now. And the pit is just basically so if someone falls in there, they can't just come right out. They have to swim or do something, and then it also prevents them from seeing anything. So now I got to be in line mode. I was in select mode, which isn't right. You got to remember what tool you're in. Oops. That was a mistake. So if you want to erase this, you just double click and that selects all the points, and then you just hit the delete key. Now I'm going to go back to draw mode because I was in selection mode. I'm systematically coming through and clicking on these. And I could have done this for the whole map, but I wanted to show you different techniques of adding this kind of stuff to the current build here. So I'm just gonna butt that up right there, butt this up right here, and then come all the way up to this corner and click right here. And then I hit escape. So that takes care of that section. And then what happens here is you can come down and zoom in, and you want to make sure you're in selection mode. So the arrow, the select mode. And if you zoom in, you'll see that they're not actually connected. So get it a lot closer. At the end, when you're done with your process, whatever tool you're in, it's good to go back and check it and see what you have. See, they're not even connected. They look connected, but they're not. They don't necessarily even have to be connected, but it's a lot smoother. So there we go. Now you have this middle one here, this middle point. I don't need that. So if you click on just that point and you click that, which is the remove selected points, it will remove the point if necessary. And it looks like it only removed one point. There might be two here. Yeah, so if I click this point and I click the delete, it basically deleted the extra line. And now I'm going to select this point here and go back over a little bit. And as you can see, it's starting to create another point. So just bring it right here. It's close enough. And then when you come up here to this corner, I can fix that by being in the select mode. That's not the drawing mode, but actually the selection mode. And then coming over here and kind of fix that. So make sure you're in the right tool to do the right job. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place. And then over here, same thing. Draw this over. Right here. So somehow this got off. I don't remember drawing it that poorly, but it happens. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we fixed a little bit of that. And then you just systematically do the same thing for all the other areas. So again, I'm going to start at this corner. I'm going to be in line mode. Ideally, you'd want this whole thing to be one piece, but you don't have that option because you have these docks in the way. So that's one of the issues that you'll run into, is how the map is drawn. So here and here and here. So I'm not being actually 100% accurate right now. I can go back and fix those points as needed. I just want to get the majority of it traced and outlined so I can come back and work on it. So this is just a way to kind of speed things up a little bit. So you don't have to be 100% accurate in the beginning. You can go through here and just kind of give a rough placement of where you want these dots. And then come back over here, grab that, grab this, and make sure you don't cross over a line or it will create a vertex. You don't want that. So click this, click that, and click that. And then I hit the escape button. Now what you do is you come in and you zoom in and you make sure that you're in the selection tool, not the drawing tool. And then you just pull these where you want them. Make sure you've selected the actual point. And then I'm going to actually move that off the wall a little bit because it's a little too close. Yeah, so this one was just a little close. And here I can kind of fix that. Like I said, you don't have to be right up on it. You know, that's just a preference thing. And you can see that corner is kind of troublesome, so I might have to come out a little bit because of this corner piece. Or you can make a loop around it if you want to be precise. I don't think it needs to be that precise. And then just kind of go through and look at your points and see where they're at and adjust them if needed. But that's another way to do it. It's better, you know, obviously if you get a little closer so you don't have to go back and redo it. But it also takes too much time if you're trying to be 100% accurate, because it's just way too many things to do. So if you want to save time, you don't need to be as accurate as you'd think. I need to add a horse. Me on the struggle train. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I can put horses on, but that would be the end. So if we're going to put horses on the docks and stuff, that would be the very end. Right now we're doing the bottom layer, so we want to look at the stuff that's below the surface or below the main surface. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking and kind of fixing these points a little bit because they're a little bit off and they're a little bit too much in some areas, so I wasn't 100% accurate. This line isn't bad, so I don't have to adjust it too much. Probably not even, probably didn't even have to. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I mean, that doesn't need to be adjusted. This one does though, so I need to pull this one out a little so it's not right up on the edge. There we go. And then this one obviously needs to go up a little bit. And then this one's too close to the dock, so I'm going to pull that over here. And then pull this one right here. There we go. So that is basically, you know, one way to do this. I should have drawn down in here. So I'm wondering if I can add a point. So if I go to draw mode and I click here, then I click down here, and then across, and then back up here, it's going to form a square basically. I hit escape, and now I'm going to go to the selection mode, and I'm going to try to join these two lines together. Okay. Now what happens if I go to the line mode and the wall? Now I'm going to be in the selection tool. I'm going to select those and I'm going to hit delete. Yeah, it didn't do what I hoped. Let me try to do the pit mode in line mode, see if that does it. Now I'm just going to highlight and select these and hit delete. Well, it kind of did it, but see what it did is it broke this one here. So that's not exactly what I wanted to do. So anyways, this is something that you're going to struggle with in the beginning, so you got to learn how to use this and how to manipulate it to what you want. So in order to fix this, I'm not sure, let's see if I can add another point here. So if I go to line tool and I'm in the pit, can I add another line or a vertice? Looks like no, because it's not even attached. So let me go back to the, I'm in the line tool right now. And then I'm going to take this and there we go. So now I have a corner I can drag. So that will help fix this problem. So this middle piece, see, I'm still in select mode, but why is it drawing? That makes no sense. Okay, so let me try this. Okay, so that is not what I wanted here. So let's see what happens. Okay. So I'm in select mode. Yeah, it's trying to draw a line. I'm not even in line mode, so I don't know what it's doing. But I wanted to, there we go. So I was grabbing the wrong vertice. So that would go back here. And this would come back here. So that's how you fix that. And then if you want to get rid of these extra points, you select one and then hit delete. Select the other, hit delete. So that's not too bad of a fix. There we go. So that kind of fixed the problem, but it didn't get rid of the line. I'm not going to worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. So there we go. So there's that. There's that. Now I need to put the pit up here and on the bottom here. So this will be an easy one. So I'll just go with the rectangle tool and draw through here. That's that. And then up here is going to be a little bit more challenging. So I'll be in the line mode and I'm still in the pit. And I'm just going to click here in the corner, and click here, and click over here, and across here, back over here, and then over here. Wait, is that what I want to do? Yep, so click here, click there. You notice I started up by the crane first. Okay, so there's that. And then I'll go to select mode and adjust. So here I'm going to bring this down to where it kind of meets this one. So it's a lot more seamless. And technically I could have drawn most of this out just, you know, one swoop, but this kind of helps you see the problems and the mistakes and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to bring this over just a little bit. I don't have to be right on it. And then I'm going to go over here, adjust this corner a little bit so that it's not right dead nuts on the dock. And then I'm going to adjust this corner a little bit by pulling it over a hair. And then pulling it up over here on this corner. Obviously that's pretty messed up, so. There we go. So that's not too bad. So now I have a pit on all areas of the water. And the reason we did that is if you fall in the water, you're not going to be able to get out as easily. Someone's going to have to rescue you. You're going to have to swim or something. And then you also cannot see up above. So that's why we did that. So that's just a little trick for terrain and, you know, to kind of show that this area is below the surface of the docks and the walking areas. So that's what's going on there. Yeah, Moepsii made this map for us for our class, so that's cool. So now that we have this, just the pit areas, now I'm going to start adding some other things. So we started with the water and put a mask on it. Then we put another layer that's on the mask. The mask is actually on the map layer now. It's not a separate layer, so it's part of the map. And then we have a separate folder here for the ocean effect. So this is the base map, and then if you want to lock anything in this folder, I'm going to lock that up so I don't actually, you know, move whatever I've done here or erase it. So that's something, a little tip. And now what I want to do is define the areas that are above ground level. So we have some issues here with that. So it's kind of a tough thing, but what we can do here is place around the areas here that have these stairwells, we can actually put an occluder there and have it run just behind this here, and then you put terrain tool on the crane itself. And then obviously all these squares are buildings, so we're going to take those and add terrain on those. And the bushes aren't high enough to do that with, but maybe these two are. So let's take a look and see how we're going to do this. So this thing here, definitely going to need basically just an occluder. Or if you want to walk on top of the rooftops, you can make it a terrain tool. I think I'm going to make it an actual occluder. So, but the only problem is that it might create problem with this here, where the stairwell is. Because I wanted to put an occluder around that, but if you do the entire map like that, then you can't see the water. So it's kind of a tough decision what you want to do. But in this case, I am going to, let's see, this is a stairwell going down, and then it goes to the dock. So in this case, how I'd handle this is I'd go to the line of sight tool, and then go to the wall, and then I'm going to make sure I'm in the wall tool. And then I want to go into line mode because I'm not going to make any rectangles. So I'll just start with this corner and work my way up. So I'll click here for one dot, click over here for this dot, and I'm kind of going in the center. And I'm just going to line it up to about here. And I'll hit escape. And then I'm going to also click on this here, on this edge, and I think I want to go to about here. And that should be good for that side. And on this side, when you're coming down, this is going to be more covered, so I'm just going to come over here and click there and then try to line it up with the other one. So that's the only occluder I have, so that'll block light when you're going down the stairwell. And then as far as this crane piece goes, you can still see it, but it's over the top. So I think the only thing I'd have to do here is either leave it the way it is or put a terrain tool over that. So I'm going to go look at the other stairwells and see what I need to do. So here's another stairwell. So when you're coming down these stairs, you probably won't see this left side too much. So I'm going to go ahead and put a occluder on there. So I'm in the line tool, line of sight, and I'm on the map layer still. So I'm going to click on the edge here, drag down, click on the corner here on the center, and then come over here and finish the line. And you can finish by double clicking, or you can hit escape. Depends on what you're doing. Now on this side here, I'm only going to put a little bit of an occluder because when you're coming down, this railing, I imagine, kind of comes down with you and you can see it tapers. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of maybe just a small point here to block the light, but you don't even have to do that really, because when you're coming down here, you should be able to see over the railing. But as you go down here, you probably won't. So what I'm going to do is move this line down a little bit more. I think it's too far up. So I'm just going to click on the point and stretch it to probably about here is when you actually start losing the visibility over the wall. So right about there should do that. So that should take care of that. So that just blocks the light from going through there. And then the other thing is look around for other stairwells. So we had, oh, here's the other one over here. Okay. So we have this one over here, and then we have this one over here. So that's that one. And I'm going to do the same thing. So this should start about halfway. So I want to go into the line mode, and I'm going to click on the center over here, or on the edge here. And it looks like you won't be able to see that, at least. And then you click here, and right about here. So that should take care of that little area, this little section. Yeah, so you're not going to see, like when you come down the stairwells, you're not going to see above that. So we can even extend this if we want to about there. So see, I messed up. I added too many lines. So what I want to do is go to the selection tool, click on the vertice, and delete it. Same thing with here. I can click on that point and delete it. What I really wanted to do is just take this one and stretch it over a little bit. There we go. So that blocks the light from escaping from that direction. So when you go down the stairwell, you should be able to see this area. But when you're coming back up, you won't see anything until you get further up the staircase from this side. So that's kind of what I'm doing there, is trying to simulate that as best I can. So I don't think I have any other staircases, but I want to check this stairwell. So if you're down here, probably won't see, we're not going to see much of that. So technically I should put another line right here. So if I click here and I just come to this little area, but what this does is it also blocks somebody from up here from looking down here. So you got to kind of think about that. So if I come out here, I'm only going to go to there. It doesn't need to cover that whole area. There we go. And then this thing here, I'm going to actually bring this back some. And same with this. So it doesn't have to be, because they'll be able to see if they're standing up here. But once they start going down, this is actually going to be here, and then this has to come in a little. So they won't be able to see much beyond this wall until they get down further. But when they're up here on this thing, it's going to be visible. So you have to kind of put it like a little bit of buffer there, not much. So it's kind of it can be really confusing on trying to figure out where visibility should be. So here's another staircase. So again, I'm going to probably not put an occluder here because I'm going to use one on the building. But for the top of the staircase to look down here, it's going to be harder to see until you get further down the stairs. So all I'm going to do is click on the line tool, and I'm just going to go about halfway here and maybe to about here, and that should simulate some of that. And then when you get down to the bottom, you're not going to see above this and this. But I'm just going to add this in as a tail, and then add this in as a tail. So all it's going to do is help block the light, but people that are on top here, if they're standing here, they'll be blocked as well. So that's why I only made it a small line. I didn't want to block the entire line. So I can actually back that up a little bit. There we go. So all I'm trying to do is take off that corner of their vision. So that's basically that. And then if I want to occlude anything else like these buildings, then I can go to rectangle mode, or I can go to terrain tool. I think I'm going to go to the the occluder, the actual let's see, I'm in wall mode, rectangle, and I just want to draw this occluder here and let it go. And that's a lot easier to do than trying to do it point by point. And I'm going to actually connect this one to this line here. So you're going to stretch it past a little bit. That way it's easier. And then you just select this little dot here and then hit the delete key, and it'll get rid of the little tail so you don't have to redo it. And it's easier to over drag than under drag. That's something I've been learning from the community and from the developers. And then this corner's a little bit much, so I might bring that in a little bit. Same with this, so bring that in. There we go. So that's basically the building. So I'm going to systematically go through and get rid of, or not get rid of, but tackle all these buildings. So if I click on here and I just kind of mark this out and draw it, and then just go back later and fix it. So I'm in the select tool. I need to be in the line tool. That's why it didn't, oops. Didn't want to do that. So if you make that mistake like I just did, just go to select mode, double click, it selects all these points, and then hit the delete key, and it will erase whatever that you did. So I want to go into the square rectangle tool, and I just want to click on a point and drag. What I did is I had it in line tool, and I was trying to draw a square. So you got to remember which tool you're in, or you're going to do that. And same thing with this. I'm just going to bring this up and bring this over. And if you noticed, I drug it down past. So if I have to, I can go back and move these points so that they match where you want it to go. So don't panic if you accidentally move it or something. Now the next thing is to go through these little guys here. So back to this rectangle tool, and I'm going to actually probably end up joining that, but I want to first put in the square. So I'm not even too worried about that right now. I just want to get it to where I can view all of them and then do them all at once. So I'm just going to go like that. And then I'll go back and fix that one. So you just want to get these things placed, and then you can play around with the points later. You want to get as close as you can, obviously. So then you come in and say, oh, well, this one's horrible. So I'm going to take this selection tool and move that back and move that over. So as you can see, it's not perfect when you do this. And then this thing here looks okay. That's fine. This is the one I wanted to fix. So this one can go down here, that one there. And then this line, I'm going to extend it to where it actually reaches the point. And it crossed over, so I know they're connected. And I'm in this selection tool, so I'm going to select that point and I'm going to erase it. So that's what you do to when you want to connect lines, just overextend it and then move it over and then erase the artifact from it. So there we go. So that's most of the buildings. Let's see what we got left. So, okay, we got that big building up there. We got that one, that one. Okay, so in the northeast, I need to do these. So again, I want to make sure I'm in the rectangle tool and I'm in the wall tool. So you always want to know where you're at in the tools. That's where most people go wrong. Okay, there's that. And then over here, there's a couple buildings, so I'm going to grab this one. And like I said, I'm just going to do that for now because I didn't have the map zoomed out all the way, but it's no big deal. And I'm going to fix that one or make this one somewhat of a rectangle. And then go back to the selection tool and adjust. So I want to zoom in a little bit and just kind of come down here and come down there. And now I go here and I'm going to fix this wall piece over here and straighten it out a little bit. There we go. So it looks all right. Not too crazy, not too bad. It's not perfect. And this one definitely needs to be adjusted. You can see it goes off too much, so it needs to come back here. So there we go. So that should take care of most of the buildings. And we have the dock and we have the water. And now what I'm going to do is add a little terrain. So for terrain tool, I'm going to add some of these bushes. So the terrain tool is a Christmas tree looking icon. And I'm going to use the ellipse tool, which is going to allow me to draw over this. And then I'm also going to draw over this. Then when you want to actually move it, you go to selection mode, double click on the dots, and then center it where you want it. And that's if you need to. Like this one doesn't look bad at all. But if you don't want a perfect circle, what you can do is you can drag these to points that you want it to be on, to make it look a little bit more, rounded or contoured to the bush. So if you don't want it to look crazy or, off too much, you could do it like that. And that will give you a better, kind of a better perspective of what the shape of the bush is. So you don't have to make it a perfect circle. You can do what you need to do to make it look right. So it's not perfect, but you get the idea that there's a bush there. So you can take the ellipse and kind of just get a rough area of where you're going to be working in. And then these things can be drug over to emulate where in the image that your branches and stuff are coming out. But this is like finer detail. You don't necessarily have to do this. But this would make it a little bit more shaped for the actual image. So it's just up to you how much detail and time you want to put into it. So there we go. So there's your bushes. And I'm not sure what this was going to be. I imagine it's a boardwalk or some kind of, maybe it's a barrier or something. So if that's the case, we can say that this is a wall that you have to walk around. Maybe it's to block the wind or something like that. So what I'm going to do is put the terrain tool on that as well. And instead of the circle or line, I'll be in the rectangle tool. And I'm going to draw just on the inside here, so I don't have to cover the whole thing. And there's that. So you can climb on top of this thing, but it's pretty tall. It's probably about 5 or 6 feet tall. So that's that. So that's basically the map. So there's something missing here, if anyone notices. I don't have a grid. So if you turn on the grid, it's not exactly perfect, but it's close. Yeah, it's 50 by 50. There's that, so close enough. And then if you don't want the gray look, I'm going to go ahead and go to the tint, go to the color picker, and I'm going to color pick some of this water out here. There we go. And now this is the color of the water, and I can turn it down a little bit, and then it won't be as obnoxious if I turn down the grid a little. There we go. So we have a grid on it, and we have the map ready to go. So this is play mode, is where you want to be when you want to check it out. You can turn on line of sight. You can turn on the lighting if you want. And you can turn on the player view. So right now it's dark because there's nothing active for lighting. So I'm going to turn those off temporarily. And I'm going to go to the lighting tool. And now I'm going to determine what kind of ambient light I want. So let me check that out. Select mode is your friend. Yes, it is. Select mode is what you need to make sure that you're in when you're working. When you're moving points or trying to grab corners and such. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign the ambient lighting. So this is the outdoor lighting, like from the sun or whatever. So first thing is first is I'm going to go to the basically ambient lighting mode. Right now its default is this darker moonlight color, so I want to change it to sunlight. And then I want to turn it on, and then let's see what we get when we go to play mode. So when we go to play mode, we're going to turn on the lighting and the player view. So now you have sunlight instead of all darkness. And that's from the player view, and this is the game master view. So what I'm going to do with that is go back to that mode and go back to the ambient light. And then you can change the direction of the shadows in here. So if you want to play around with shadows, you can. So the shadows would come in where the line of sight is. So you can mess around with that. And you have to make sure that the line of sight is active. So let's see what we got here. So there's the enabling the lighting. So there's your shadows. And then if you go to the tool itself and you adjust the shadows, so I want to make sure I'm in the right mode, you can mess with the length of the shadows. So maybe the shadows are roughly, let's see, that's 6, so let's go with 5. So roughly the shadows are 5 wide. And it depends on the time of year. So if it's like winter time, maybe the shadows are even greater. Maybe it's like 10 in the winter time because of the angle of the sun. So that's basically how you mess with the shadows, and you have daytime now. Now what we need to do is go to the ambient light, and then we're also going to put I'm going to put some lights on the cranes. Even though it doesn't really show one, I'm just going to put a map oriented light. So if I click on the map itself and I click on add light, all I'm going to do is add like maybe a torch or something to light up the area of the cranes. We'll say it has a magical light or something on it, and I'm just going to click on this little nub here and assign the light there. But at first I want to figure out what type of light. So I'm probably going to go with a lamp. And then it has a flicker to it, which is fine. And you can turn the flicker up to reflect that it's windier out if you want. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And that adds the ambient light to that particular area. I'm going to click up here. And you can see it's already starting to light that up. And it's daytime, so it really shows. And then I'm going to click here. I think there's only 3 cranes. Yeah. So the cranes have lights on them so that they're visible, and when the boats come in, they know where to go. And now I'm going to go to play mode, and I'm going to bring this up to what the players see. Yeah, so the players see the shadows and such, and it's daytime, so it's really not going to show them much. So if I go back to the lighting mode and I change this ambient lighting, I'm going to switch it to, let's go with moonlight. So moonlight is a lot dimmer, and that's what they're going to see. So here's the lights from the shadows from the cranes. And then if I bring a character on here, let's see, or actually this will be an NPC, not a character. But I want to bring up the combat tracker, and then I have a couple NPCs, so I'm going to grab the Angela token one. So NPCs, here's Angela, and then here's Chris. So Chris's token has dark vision built into it, so I'm just going to use Angela. So I'll make her token visible. I'm going to turn her to both of these into friendly, and drag Angela onto the map. So once I take possession, and I have to be in play mode, so I take possession of Angela, that is her normal vision without any lighting. So the line of sight is blocking the areas that she cannot see, and then the moonlight is lighting up all this other stuff. So if I wanted to turn that off altogether, I could. But I'm going to give Angela a torch. So if I go to the lighting tool, and then I go to add light, or you can go to token light, or you can go to token vision. So in this case, this is a vision thing. Or you can go up here, which is in the effects tool, which could be the running man or a wand, depending on your theme. And you can drag and drop. So I'm going to drag the torch over to Angela. So take this effect, drag and drop it on her combat tracker entry. And now, when I take possession of her, she has a torch. And I have to be in play mode to move her around. So she has a torch. If you look carefully, there's a radius around here. And it's kind of hard to tell because the lanterns are basically, they're providing her with extra light. So if you wanted to test that without the ambient light, you can go to lights, and then you're going to go to the ambient light, and then you would turn it off. And that's basically you seeing her with her lantern, and then these other two lights are still on. So I only turned off one of the lights, so that turns off the ambient moonlight. That's what that does. So there's no moonlight now, and this is the dark mode. So basically, when I go back to player mode, if you move her token around, you'll see the radius of the different things. Now, the thing I wanted to show you is if you drop her in the water, she won't be able to see anything but what is in the water. So to get her out of the water or move her through walls, you need to hit shift and drag her up. So that is basically how this works. So the buildings are blocking the light. You have ambient light, which I turned off. So if I want to turn the moonlight back on, I have to go back to that mode and click on ambient lighting and then turn it on. And that's actually moonlight right there. So you can have a dark night, or you can just have a average night. So that's pretty much it. So that's kind of a challenging map because it had different levels and things to consider. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do for today. I do have a link for you guys, so let me throw that in the chat. So this is this particular doc, I don't think it's available on his website, but this is Moepsii's maps. So if I'm going to my notes and go to some user experiences that I want to tell you about, and then this is a contributor, so I will copy and paste his link right here and put it in the chat in Twitch. And then I also listed it on the so I will put that in the description of the video just in case. So that's something that we can do. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you is a couple statements that I found on the DMs Guild. So these aren't coming from me, but not the DMs Guild, but the Fantasy Grounds forum. So it says for user experience, it says Fantasy Grounds Unity, the new layers, if you don't currently have a layer selected, it will create new layers. It leaves the layer when you delete a light because Fantasy Grounds doesn't know for sure if that layer is empty. So sometimes you can get into a bad habit of forgetting to select the lighting layer when you add new lights, and then you end up like that. And what happens is when you put image, walls, and lights all on the same layer, if you want it, you just have to make sure that that you have the correct layers selected. If you end up with a bunch of empty layers, you can use the trash can over here to delete. So if you had a ton of different layers, you could use the trash can, so you would select it and then delete it with the trash can. So right now, everything I have is on this layer. So that's decent, except for the water. And the final touch on this map would be some fog or something. So if you went to the effects tab, and then you add a new effect layer. So I'm going to add an effect. And then you can add, in this case, let's go with clouds, because I think everyone uses fog. And then I'm going to turn off the player view for right now so I can see what's going on. And then I'm going to add a mask to that fog layer. So I want to make sure I'm selecting that, and I'm in the effects tool. And I'm going to slow the speed down a little bit so it's not too fast. And then I'm going to turn it down a little so it's not too bright. And I can turn up the shadows on the clouds if you want. And then there's an offset that offsets the texture. And then what you do is you can blur this a little bit so it's not too contrasted over the rest of it, so it kind of fits in better. And then the other thing is I'm going to put this cloud layer inside my map effects folder. And within my map effects, I want the clouds above the ocean. And then that way you can see the effect better. And now I'm going to go back to play mode and go back to the player view, and then there's your clouds. So that would be your last resort there, would be to use that. And then when Angela goes up here, she could see the different. Now, see, I have to hit shift. If you accidentally drag your token to the wrong area, it'll block it. So now I got Angela moving through, and here's the wall that she could. If you open this up, that means she's up on the wall and she's looking down. So there you go. That should be it. I think that was a good hour show or so. So hopefully you guys picked up a few things. And like I said, if you have this effect here, this clouds, you probably want to put a mask on it because it'll be all over the screen here. So what you want to do is add a mask, and then you just go on to the reveal tool, and I'm just going to reveal the map itself and nothing else, so that way the effect isn't all the way on the outside of the map. And you would see that in play mode. If you turn off the disabled this is the GM view, and if you didn't put that mask on there, you would see the clouds all over the place. So, but this is what you see as the game master, and then you can turn off the lighting if you want. But that shows, the toggles the different light that you have active. And then if you hit Control P, you can see what the players actually see. So that's like a little preview mode. And it's temporary, it doesn't toggle permanently. You want to toggle it, you got to come into the map tool itself. Now there are some extensions out there that are trying to make this easier, but you need to learn the functionality of Fantasy Grounds before you start dinking around with those. But this is a really good idea of how to mess with this. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to call it and shut it down. If you guys have any questions, I'll hang out for a minute. Yeah, select mode is definitely your friend. So if anybody has any questions or comments or anything, let's go ahead and say that. If not, I'm just going to go to YouTube and I'm going to bring this up. I forgot to add the horse. I'll do that another time. But anyways, you guys take care. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of it. And I will see you around on the flip side. So